Hello. So today we're going to talk about the weather. Um, the weather changes from day to day. Some days we know that it's sunny, some days it can be cloudy, other days it's rainy or snowy. And there's different conditions, and we're going to learn some vocabulary that shows what makes the weather. Why is the weather Why does it rain some days and snow on other days? What factors create that weather? And before we get too into weather, I also want to point out what climate is. We're not going to spend too much time talking about climate, but those two words are related but also different. Weather, when we talk about weather, we're talking about what it is from day to day. We may have several days in a row that are sunny and warm, kind of like we've been experiencing lately. Um, but the climate, that has to do with over time and space, what that weather is like that averages, in a certain area, in a certain place. So we know that like the climate of places that are along the equator are really warm. There's the rainforest is by the equator because these conditions, there's a lot of rain and there's a lot of constant warm temperature. So we would call that the climate. The climate of Missouri, we have seasons and we have warm summers, we have cold winters, and that weather again, that weather is talking about what it's like from day to day. And so people have looked at that weather, you know, somebody somewhere is recording that on March 1st, 2021, it actually, I don't, that's in the future for me. It was a sunny day and it was this many degrees. It's being recorded somewhere. And people look at that, they look at the average yearly rainfall of places, how much snow a place will get each year, and all those looking at that weather over time, that determines, you know, then we can kind of make this say, oh, this is what the climate is like. So again, looking at that weather over time. So let's talk about the weather. Got a nice book that really helps. Weather Words by Gail Gibbons. And Weather Words and What They Mean by Gail Gibbons. Excuse me. Look, it's sunny. I need my boots, it's raining. It's beginning to snow. The weather forecast is fair today. Whew, it sure is hot and humid. So the weather changes from day to day. Weather words explain what the weather is like outside. Temperature. The weather is made up of temperature, air pressure, how much moisture is in the air, and how fast the wind is moving. So all those factors make up the weather. The position of the sun and other factors cause temperature change. Air pressure. Air pressure is the force produced by the weight of the air pressing down on the earth. So we haven't talked a lot about force yet, but that air pressure, that force, the weight of the air pressing down on the earth. There's moisture. Moisture in the air comes from water that evaporates mostly from the oceans. So we talked about that a lot in the water cycle, that evaporation that happens from oceans, lakes, rivers. It produces moisture in the air. And then wind. Wind is air in motion. So let's look a little bit more at temperature. The temperature goes up and down. When the sun rises in the morning, the air becomes warmer and the temperature goes up. When the sun sets, the air becomes cooler and the temperature goes down. The temperature also changes with the seasons. In the summer, the sun is high in the sky, the days are warm and longer. And we use words like hot and warm. In the winter, the sun is low in the sky and the days are cold and shorter, like now. Air pressure. So high pressure is when air particles are close together. The air is usually cool and dry. High pressure often brings fair weather. So it's kind of good when there's high pressure. We have fair weather. When there's low pressure, that is when the air particles are farther apart. The air is usually warm and moist, and that low pressure often brings wet weather and sometimes storms. We also like it when there's low pressure because we need moisture. We need precipitation. Let's talk a little bit more about moisture. The amount of moisture in the air is called humidity. If you've ever heard a weatherman talk about the humidity, or weather woman, that's how much moisture is in the air. So warm air has more moisture in it than cold air. If you ever notice in the winter, like your skin is drier in the winter, that's because there's less moisture in the air. So that's why we use more lotion and things like that in the winter. So there's less moisture. At night, when the air cools down, it can't hold as much moisture. So the moisture that forms on the ground is called dew. So that air is colder and it can't hold it. So that's why when we wake up in the morning, early in the morning, we'll see that dew on the grass. If the temperature goes below freezing, the dew freezes, and then it is called frost. So we know from the water cycle that moisture makes clouds too. That water evaporates and it rises up into the atmosphere. That as it rises, the air becomes cooler, it condenses, and it forms clouds. So when water evaporates from rivers, lakes, and oceans, it is called vapor. It moves up with the warm air and forms little drops of water or ice crystals, and that cloud is formed. So we know those clouds are little droplets of water or ice crystals. So clouds come in all shapes and sizes. There are three main kinds of clouds. The cumulus clouds are puffy. They are fair weather clouds. Cirrus clouds are the highest clouds. They mean fair weather too. And then stratus clouds are low gray clouds. They sometimes bring rain or snow. There are other kinds of clouds with long names. They are combinations of cumulus, cirrus, and stratus clouds. Cirrocumulus clouds usually mean changing weather. Cirrostratus clouds often bring rain or snow. Nimbostratus clouds bring rain or snow. Altostratus clouds often bring rain or snow. Altocumulus clouds can bring showers or snow flurries, and sometimes the sun shines through them. Stratocumulus clouds usually are winter clouds. And then cumulonimbus clouds are thunderstorm clouds. A cloud close to the Earth's surface is called fog. So whenever it's foggy, we're actually like, if you're walking through that fog, you're walking through a cloud. Rain forms inside rain clouds. The water vapor that evaporates from below forms tiny water drops. The tiny drops join together and become bigger drops. And when they're heavy enough, they fall, and we have rain. Rain comes down in different ways. There's drizzle. Drizzle is when raindrops are very small. A shower is a brief rainfall. A normal rain is a steady rainfall. And then a rainstorm is when there are strong winds and lots of rain. Sometimes there are floods when heavy rain falls or when it rains for a long time. Thunderstorm. Thunderstorms can be powerful and noisy. Lots of tiny drops of water whip around inside the cloud at very high speeds. So those tiny drops of water are moving around in the clouds, and when they rub and bump against each other, they make electricity. And when enough electricity builds, it bursts through the cloud and flashes, and this is called lightning. Lightning is very hot. It heats the air around it. The hot air expands, and boom! It makes a loud noise called thunder. Rainbow. Everyone loves looking at a rainbow. This may happen while it is raining or just after the rain stops. When sunbeams shine through drops of rain, the light breaks up into 7 colors, a rainbow appears. Sometimes in the winter it snows. Snow crystals form when moisture freezes inside the clouds. When the snow crystals join together, they become snowflakes. When they are heavy enough, they fall. Snow falls to the earth in different ways. There's flurries. Flurries are when it snows lightly. A snowstorm is when a lot of snow falls. It can be windy. Sleet is snow that melts and refreezes before it hits the ground. Snow, there's a normal snowfall occurs when there is little or no wind. And then a blizzard is a snowstorm with high winds. The snow can become deeper as the wind howls. And it's also just a lot of snow over a short period of time. Hail. Sometimes it hails. Inside the cloud, ice crystals are tossed up and down. Water vapor freezes onto the ice crystal in layers. So if you've ever cut a piece of hail open, you'll see these rings, kind of like tree rings inside the hail. And that's as many times as it has gone up and down and collected these layers. When they become heavy enough, they fall as hailstones. Hailstones can be as small as a pea or as big as a baseball. Wind. Wind happens when warm air moves up and cooler air moves in to replace it. Warm and cool temperatures affect the wind speed and direction, and wind direction is where the wind comes from. So we see this cool air, the warm air rises. When wind blows with more and more force, a windstorm develops. There are many kinds of windstorms. Often they cause damage. So a gale is a strong windstorm. A hurricane is a spiral-shaped windstorm that comes from the tropics. It's formed over the ocean and moves onto land. And then a tornado is a dark funnel-shaped windstorm that twists. Very destructive. I'm from Kansas. I've seen tornadoes. All right. The many combinations of temperature, air pressure, moisture, and wind create different kinds of weather conditions. A big area of weather that is the same is called an air mass. The boundary between two air masses is called a front. This boundary is where the weather changes. So if you've ever heard the term, the weather person says, a cold front is moving in, that weather is changing. The weather is hardly ever the same from day to day, and that's why it's so interesting. So he's saying, let's go swimming, it's hot. Brr, it's cold outside. We've experienced that. Last week it was so cold. Or wait, I guess so 2 weeks ago, it was so cold, and now we've been experiencing this kind of nice warmer weather. It's not hot yet, but it's very mild would be a good word. All right, so here are some cool weather facts. The driest non-polar place in the world is the Atacama Desert in Chile. A number of years ago in France, a tornado crossed a pond and sucked up everything at the place where the tornado stopped. The people had a surprise rainfall of fish and frogs. So that's what we call like a water spout, that funnel. It funnels up and sucks up the moisture. When this funnel happens over, in this case, it was a pond. And so it sucked up all those little life creatures, and when the tornado stopped, it rained down frogs and fish. There is enough electricity in one flash of lightning to light a small town for one day. There's a lot of electricity in a flash of lightning. It rains more days each year on Kauai, Hawaii than in any other place in the world. There it rains about 350 days a year. So there's 365 days in a year, and in Kauai, Hawaii, it rains 350 of those days. So it rains almost every single day. The highest wind speed ever recorded was 253 miles per hour in 1996 on Australia's Barrow Island. Wow. When I lived in Kansas, there was one time we had a windstorm as high as 90 miles an hour, and that was pretty scary. I can't even imagine what 253 miles an hour would be like. Sound travels at 1,125 feet per second. So if you are 1 mile away from lightning, it will take about 5 seconds for the sound of thunder to reach you. So if you've ever heard thunder, I used to do this a lot. You can count seconds and you can kind of figure out how far away it is. So when you see, or when you see the flash of lightning, you can count the time between the lightning and the thunder to see about how far away it is. So if you see the flash of lightning with immediate boom of thunder, you know that the thunderstorm is right overhead. The coldest recorded temperature was in Antarctica. It was negative 128 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 89.2 degrees centigrade or Celsius. And then the hottest recorded temperature was in Death Valley, California. It was 134 degrees Fahrenheit. Most scientists think the Earth is getting warmer, and that is changing weather patterns. All right, so remember, when you hear a weather forecast that gives storm warnings, pay attention and be careful. And on our Padlet here, we have a lot of these weather words that you can see, where you have the definition, and then of course my little recording here of that definition. And make sure you scroll to the bottom. At the bottom of each one of these is a little, oh, I didn't get a video yet up on tornado. It will be up by the time you see this. There's little videos up on each of these things. So you can watch those videos and learn even more about fog and even more about thunderstorms and rainbows and so on. So I hope you enjoyed these weather words. If you feel inspired to make a book of these weather words and definitions, or you feel inspired to write about or make a play or something about what makes weather, go for it. Have fun. And I'll see you next time.